12 minutes of an aggressor state's aircraft in the airspace of a NATO country. Is that a lot or a little? NATO claims it responded instantly. Ukrainian military experts expressed doubts. President Zelensky stated that the incursion of Russian MiG-31S fighter jets into Estonian airspace was not an accident but a systematic Russian campaign against the West. And it requires a systematic response. And TSN international correspondent Yana Slesarchuk recalls a story that is about to turn 10 years old. The only NATO country that managed to effectively defend itself and its borders from Russia was Turkey. Let's watch the report.
12 minutes. That's exactly how long 3 Russian MiGs, 2-seater fighter jets that over the past 4 years have become instruments of terror against Ukrainians, remained in Estonian airspace. Then, NATO jets scrambled on alert forced them to retreat to their own territory. NATO responded immediately and intercepted the Russian aircraft. This is yet another example of Russia's brazen behavior and NATO's ability to respond. 12 minutes is more than enough for a MiG-31S to gather information about local coastal radars and test the air defense response time. However, above all, this is a political move by the Kremlin, which the leader of NATO, the United States, consistently encourages by not responding firmly. They'll get away with this too.
I'll look into this matter. They'll prepare a detailed report for me soon. I'll let you know tomorrow.
But overall, how do you feel about this?
I don't like this kind of thing. I don't like it when things like this happen.
The head of European diplomacy, former Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, understands the significance of the Russian threat much better than many other politicians.
Obviously, Russia is testing how far it can go. We cannot show weakness because weakness only invites Russia to go further. And they are becoming increasingly dangerous, not only for Ukraine, but for all countries that border Russia.
Estonia is convening consultations under Article 4 of the NATO Charter, just as Poland did a week and a half ago after 24 Russian drones entered its territory. But the problem is that 10 days after the obvious act of aggression against Poland, NATO is still, according to CNN, unable to reach an agreement. Whether the Kremlin deliberately launched the drones or they somehow, just by chance, ended up in Poland on their own, deviating from the route laid out through Ukrainian territory.
This happened after the attacks on Poland. This happened after the attacks on Poland. These are systematic tests for NATO. That's why we are asking our partners to demonstrate unity among the alliance states when we discuss how to strengthen the Baltic states and the eastern flank, because it's clear that Putin is moving to a new level of provocations which requires an adequate response.
The only NATO country that once responded adequately to a violation of its border by a Russian fighter jet was Turkey. In 2015, after warning the pilot several times to immediately change course, a Turkish fighter jet shot down a Russian Su-24.
Today's unfortunate loss is directly connected to the significant blow that was dealt to us from behind. As far as we currently know, the Turkish side subsequently turned to its NATO partners for assistance and support. As if we were the ones who shot down a Turkish plane.
One of the 2 Russian pilots who ejected from the downed fighter jet did not survive. On that very day, Syrian rebels who were fighting against Assad's regime openly spoke about it on camera, saying that was exactly why they were being bombed. A Russian Su was also flying in the region.
The Russian plane dropped a bomb on us before entering Turkish airspace, where it was then shot down. Our fighters opened fire on the pilots as they were landing.
The Turkish government expressed its position on the incident at the same time as the Kremlin dictator.
We want the international community to know we are ready to make any sacrifice when it comes to the security of our border and the lives of our citizens. It is our international right and national duty to take appropriate measures against anyone who violates the state border, whether on land or in the air.
There was no point of no return, as the Russians claimed. Until the summer of the following year, Putin banned Russian tourists from traveling to Turkey and denied other Russians the opportunity to buy Turkish vegetables and fruits. In June, Erdogan wrote him a symbolic letter in which he never actually apologized for shooting down the plane, but assured him that no one intended to shoot it down and expressed condolences to the family of the deceased. In response, Putin lifted the travel restrictions and allowed Turkish goods back onto the Russian market. Since then, not a single Russian plane has crossed the Turkish border. Yana Slesarchuk, Anatoly Korop, TSN 1+1, Marathon United News.
They will strike at Russia's energy and finances. The European Commission has presented the 19th package of sanctions. The decision was personally announced by the head of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. As part of the new package, it is proposed to ban the import of Russian liquefied gas into the EU until January 1st, 2027. In addition, Brussels proposes to strengthen safeguards against sanctions evasion by targeting cryptocurrency exchanges. They also want to impose new restrictions on goods and technologies that could be used in the war against Ukraine. 45 Russian and foreign companies from 3 countries that support the Kremlin's military-industrial complex are to be added to the blacklist. And another 118 ships from Russia's so-called shadow fleet. These are vessels that deliver fuel in violation of existing restrictions. Sanctions representatives had them earlier, but the decision was postponed because Europeans were consulting with the Americans. Washington is setting a condition. If the EU wants restrictions from them, then they themselves must also take tough measures. And it's worth noting that this package still needs to be approved by the EU Council, and its adoption requires the support of all 27 leaders of the European Union member states. The Financial Times writes that in order to overcome a possible veto from Viktor Orban, the European Commission plans to unfreeze 550 million euros for Hungary.
Europe is facing challenges. Over the past 2 weeks, Russian Shahed drones have violated the airspace of our union, both over Poland and Romania. These are not the actions of someone who seeks peace. Again and again, President Putin escalates the situation. And in response, Europe is increasing the pressure. That is why today I am presenting the 19th package of sanctions. The first point is energy. Russia's war economy relies on profits from fossil fuels. We want to cut off these revenues. Therefore, we are banning the import of Russian liquefied natural gas to European markets. It's time to turn off the taps. We are ready for this.
There was a Russian Vityazm and now it's gone. The main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense reports on the successful special operation. At night, fighters from the Viking Maritime Operations Center, Department of Active Operations of the main intelligence directorate, landed on the temporarily occupied Tendrivska Spit in the Black Sea in the Kherson region. There, they set up minefields. A multi-purpose tractor of the occupiers, the DT-10, which they call Vityaz, drove over them and was blown up. According to Ukrainian military intelligence, the occupiers used the Vityaz to transport personnel, weapons and food to their positions. Now the Russians will have to look for other delivery services. The 19th sanctions package from the Europeans could become one of the 5 most painful sanctions against Russia. This was stated on the national marathon broadcast by Vladislav Vlasuk, the Commissioner for Sanctions Policy. In his opinion, consultations between European politicians and Americans influenced the adoption of such sanctions. By the end of next week, the Council of the European Union is expected to finally adopt and approve this sanctions package at its meeting. The Ukrainian side hopes that it will be approved without any changes. At the same time, the US and the UK have already begun working on new sanctions packages against Russia.
Simultaneously with the final adoption of the 19th package, we expect to see another sanctions package from the United Kingdom. And in fact, there is a chance, I emphasize, it's not a certainty, but there is a chance that along with the sanctions package, for the first time during Trump's era, the United States itself will also come forward. This would be a major step. We don't know if it will happen, but it has been prepared specifically in coordination with the United States, the European Union, and the United Kingdom. And in many ways, these sanctions decisions will be similar.